everybody. We're doing a service repair video on one of these. It's a GE 5-wing, typical General Electric fan. Just got this one the other day. Figure, I haven't really done anything with it other than, some cosmetics on it, such as I replaced a few of these grill bushings, put a handle on it, one of the originals, and got a factory speed knob for it. Other than that, I really haven't done anything as far as mechanically on this fan. Haven't even torn the grills off yet, so it's a service video on how to repair a few different things on these fans, such as, for one, balancing the blade, oiling, cleaning, etc. And then as far as rubbing in the motor and basically how to get it all apart, and then how to fix the buzzing issue, or if you have any knockings. Fortunately, this one does not have a motor knock. It does have a bit of the shaded pole buzzing issue, which we will address further in the video. I'm not really going to clean it up too much in the video. I'm just pretty much going to service as far as repairs go, and that's about it. So without further ado, we'll get started right away on it. I'm going to use, I already got permission from the guy. I'm going to use SpatsBear's video on his W22 that he has as far as the motor buzzing issue. Mine doesn't really do it that loud, so you can't really tell, and it only does it after about 5 minutes of using it. So shout out to SpatsBear and Harley Badger. They gave me full-on permission to use a segment of their video in my repair video. So thanks to you guys. So without further ado, let's get started. So here's a quick little insight on the fan real quick. As you can see, somebody messed with it with some paint. Otherwise, the fan's in very good condition overall. It's got this weird cord job on it, which I'm going to replace. There's the new factory knob. It came off of one of my parts fans, along with the handle on top. Somebody had to have riveted these, probably a leather or a kind of a strap to it or something as a handle, considering the original broke off years ago. Let me show you how it runs. You can hear the rubbing. Otherwise, it runs really good. It's got one of the smoothest running motors that I've got in my collection. As you can see, it's slowing down rather quick. And there's that rubbing again. See, it does have a rather quick spin down time, so that's what the oiling process is for. Quick insight of what we're going to need for tools. They're all right here except for one, and I don't even remember what it was at this point. I just had it in my head and then I lost it. So first off, you're going to need some retaining clip pliers, and you're going to want to use the ones with the smallest tip. As you can see, if it'll focus, there you go. You need some of these. You're going to need a couple of flathead screwdrivers. I prefer to use the large handle with the large top to get the motor off, and then two smaller ones to get the C-clip out of the back of the motor. And lastly, you're going to need some zoom spout oil to oil the motor. Oh, I remember what I needed. You're also going to want to use rubbing alcohol to clean out the bearing for any oil buildup, whatever it may be. I usually use rubbing alcohol as it evaporates really quick and it cleans it out nice and quick and easy, and then you just use Q-tips to go in and out of it and get all the dirt out. Then once it's good to go, then you just pump some zoom spout in there and call it good. Probably going to replace the cord in the video. So without further ado, let's get started on dismantling this fan. So the first step is to get the grills off. Now this is a W22. The grills differ from model to model. Usually your W12s, which is a 3-wing version of this, usually they have this style mount, which pretty much they all do. You're going to want to basically get behind the grill, and this is how you remove it. You basically flex it and then lift the bottoms out, and then you can get the grill off that way. And the same applies for both sides, front and back. Now the W25, I can do a video of the W25 as well on how to remove grills. It's got a different setup, so we're going to cut to that grill in a second here. Here's reference for a W25. As you can see, the grill mount styles are different. These have, basically, it kind of pushes right into the frame using these little metal tabs that act as basically, it holds on the grill tip. And they recommend using a screwdriver for it, but I've found that you can actually just get behind it with your fingers and release it that way. And then you do the same for both sides, and then the grill will come off. That's how you do it on a W25, depending on which model you have. Otherwise, that's really the only difference between a W25 and a W22 as far as dismantling the grill, and that's what a W25 looks like. Pretty much identical, other than that. Other than the grills and the size of the frame. Just a little bit smaller. The W25 is a bit smaller than the W22. So now we got the blades off on the GE. Now this is what you're going to see. This one actually looks a bit different. I've never seen one with a metal disc behind it. It's kind of odd. Never seen one like that. Usually they look like this on the W25. And that's all it is. This must be an older one, considering it's metal. Which is kind of interesting to me. I wonder if that's factory or not, but I've never seen one with a metal center to the hub like that. It's pretty interesting. But we'll take off this C-clip here and see what we have in store. So now what you're going to want to do, you can see the C-clip here. All you got to do is get the pliers in the two little holes there and spread the ring off and pull it off, and you're good to go. And then you just remove the blade, pull it off. Alright, there we go. We've got the C-clips off, and it's ready to go. I'm actually beginning to think that this could be a factory bushing, though I've never seen a metal one. Even my other one, my older one, this one I actually moved the badge to the center because I didn't have a W22 with a badge in the middle. My other one had it up in the upper corner, which is the older version. Now I've never seen, even that one doesn't have this metal like centerpiece right here. I've never seen that, so kind of interesting. But we're going to take off the blades and we'll see what we have. So here's what's interesting. This is definitely an older version. Usually these 5-wings have kind of different, they have different cut rotor fins. They usually come down like in a curved shape. Now this is the older rotor, so this is definitely one of the older ones. It's definitely older than the one I've got, so this must be a very, very, very first generation. Because this is the rotor style that they had on the 3-wings. Let's see from the back here if that's actually factory. And as you can see here, you can see those numbers there. There's a 1 there. I'm going to get this cleaned out, but there's numbers. It starts 1 and it goes all the way to, I think it goes to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's 10 of them. Now you're going to want to line those up on the rotor, and that's actually how you balance these. And that's what that means. But I've never seen a metal hub like that. That's definitely an interesting concept. I've never seen that before. And I'm certain that that's factory because even the dimple on the other 5-wings, the newer ones, it's just plastic. I've never seen a metal one there. And I'm pretty sure nobody would have cut that off and just put a metal one in there. I'm pretty sure that's almost impossible, but as you can see, it's definitely an older one. It's definitely an early 66. So, and the other way to indicate that is the metal dot above the speed knob, which as you can see on a W25 doesn't have it, and neither do some of the later or newer versions of the W22. So now we're going to get the motor housing off. Let's see if it'll go. But basically, if you can't get it off by hand, if you can't get this cover off by hand, you just take a screwdriver behind there and pop it off. So I'll be back in just a moment once I get that off. So now we got the motor housing off. Let me see if I can figure out which shade pole is making the buzzing noise. In case you're wondering what a shade pole is, that's let's see if it'll focus for me. Right there. That little tiny little bronze piece right there is a shade pole. Now what happens when you get the motor buzzing issue on these GEs, you get it from the front. Once it's up to speed, it clicks. Which you saw earlier on on the video that SpatsBear let me use. As you can see, that's what the shaded pole buzzing noise is. And if yours makes that, it's caused by those poles. And what happens over time is they either break or they come loose. And really all you actually have to do is take some adhesive. I usually just use super glue. And then all you have to do is just basically glue them back in place to keep them from moving. Because what they do is they actually come loose and they start hitting the edge of the rotor. And that's what that noise is caused by. So I think the next step is to get this motor apart, and so that's how you fix that shaded pole buzzing issue. Next we're going to address on further dismantling of this motor. We'll see if we can even get it off the brackets, because a lot of times these the screws for the motor get stuck and they're just kind of a pain to get off. So we're going to get this motor apart, cleaned and oiled. Also, really quick, you're going to hear what noise I was talking about by the rubbing. As you can see, it's not very well oiled. Definitely needs some cleaning done to it and oiled. But that's that rubbing noise I was telling you about. And usually what happens is the wicks get dry and it just creates a lot of rubbing. So we're going to get this apart and cleaned. Alright, so now we got the back grill off. This is what you're going to look at. This is the back of the motor. Now, quick fact for you, they actually changed the motor housing design just a little bit from in a matter of 2 years. This is the one that they had from 66 through 67. And then on a W25, and even on the W22s, they changed to this style. Now it's not much of a difference, but as you can see, that completely horizontal, the horizontal vent on that fan is not a vent. It's just a solid piece there, the one with the hole. And as you can see on the older ones, that piece has a hollow one. And that's one thing that they changed from year to year. Just a little minor cosmetic change, but helps you identify your years. So this one's an early 66 with the older style rotor, and then they changed to the new style rotor while still maintaining this design with the indicator on by the knob and the same motor housing. And then on the one after this, they changed the housing to that style on the W25, and then they removed the speed indicator and shortened the cord to a 6 foot instead of an 8 foot. So we're going to get this motor apart real quick. You're going to want to take off those the lead clips right there. It's pretty easy. You just get your hand behind them, and there's on the other side there's little tabs right there. You just kind of want to put your hand on the back and kind of push on the sides a little bit, and then the clips will come right off. And there's going to be 2 of them. There's going to be one on the top. This just makes it easier to work with the motor. And if I can't get one of those screws off, generally I like to just work on it while it's mounted to the bracket, but that's just me. So now we're going to get these screws off. Change of plans. Screwdrivers, I can't get enough leverage to break them free, so thank God for a dad who has a big toolbox. Here's our tool of choice. A large flat bit on one of these, basically, I don't know what to call this thing. It's basically a screwdriver of some form with a bendable arm, and we're going to bend it sideways to get some leverage, get it in there and crank it off that way. So we'll see if this works. Lo and behold, my idea worked. Got these things, both of them, off without a breeze, or in a breeze. Yeah, got them both off, so now we can just use screwdrivers for this point. We're gonna get the motor off and we will service it. But in this case, since I don't have a power drill, all of our stuff's up at our house in Milltown. We're just literally going to use a super tiny screwdriver and a hammer. We're going to punch a hole into the steel Welch plug that's in the back of the motor. Don't recommend doing it this way unless you have a surface that you can put the motor on that's not going to mess with it too much. Otherwise, you usually just want to drill a hole. So we're going to get this motor where we need it, and then we're going to get that hole punched in there. So now we got the motor off the bracket. This is what we see. That's that plug I was telling you about. So you usually just want to line up where you're going to punch your hole, because otherwise you might not get your plate back on. Line up your plate. I usually put the hole lined up with the top one, so that way you can actually easily oil these and get some oil inside of the motor. If you just do it from the top, it'll drain in there and it'll soak up in the plug into the oil wick, and then it'll usually just, you know, absorb into the motor that way. So we're going to get a hole punched in that, and I'll be right back. Okay, so now we got the hole punched in there. Like I said, usually you want to use a drill for this part. Works a lot easier, and there's not a lot of banging around going on. So I usually just want to use a drill, but I don't have a drill, so kind of had to resort to plan B. That is the plan B if you do not have a drill. So always use a drill. Alright, we got that plate punched off. The way I did that was I just stuck the screwdriver back through the same hole, angled it sideways, and then used the mallet and basically popped it off using leverage. So you kind of do this action with it. You get it in there and you pop it off. So now this is what we're looking at. Let's see. Let's see what humble jumble mess we got ourselves here. So let's see how good the shape of the wicking is. Looks awfully filthy. Get that wick out of there. It's surprisingly really movable. It's surprisingly not that dried out. Just some crap in there, but we're going to get this cleaned out. I'm going to soak it in some rubbing alcohol, get all the old out of there, and then we're going to get this motor apart. So I threw the wick in a little bowl of rubbing alcohol, and it soaked it up immediately. So it tells you that the wick is still very healthy. And so I'm going to let that sit in there for a while. I'm going to rotate it every now and then so I could soak it up and filter it out. Then when you're done, just run it under some water, let it dry, and then douse the crap out of it with some Zoom spout. Now I'm probably going to put the rest of the washers in here and just clean them out too, so that's what I'll do. Now we're going to get to the part where we remove the C-clip. This is the fun part that everybody hates because you often lose your C-clip because it likes to spring off. So as you can see, the C-clip is right here, right behind the single washer right there. And you're going to want to kind of rotate the washer a little bit and get the angle of it on there. Sorry about that, my dad called me. So yeah, all you got to do is get behind that C-clip. You can see both ends right there. You just have to kind of push it off, and that's what the two flathead screwdrivers are for. And kind of when you do it, just kind of get your finger behind it so that way it doesn't spring off on you. So we'll get that off and give you an update in a second. So now we got that C-clip off, and now here comes the moment of truth. We're going to see how bad the shaft looks. So now all you got, let me let my camera focus real quick. Now all you got to do, be very gentle in this part. You do not want to twist at all, otherwise you'll warp your bearing. Just a steady, easy, and pull the rotor right out. And now you got to be careful, and there it came out without a problem. The shaft looks really clean. There's no scoring on it, so that tells you that it's got a very healthy bearing, which is good. That's what we want. I didn't even see them fall out, but the washers should be, there they are. As you can see, ooh, they're really grimy. We're gonna get those soaking real quick. Yeah, you can see the water's turning kind of a brown color. So let's get all these in here, get these soaking. They are really grimy. So get those in there soaked up real good. There's going to be quite a few of these nylon washers. This one didn't even have a, this one didn't even have a felt washer. If there was, I didn't see it, and it's probably still on the motor, but you're going to have quite a few nylon washers, it looks like. So let's go back to the motor real quick. Ooh. Doesn't look like there's anything else, just looks like that's all there is. And there's the bearing. The inside of the bearing looks very healthy, which is good. We're going to get that cleaned up real quick. So I got some Q-tips over here. You just go on to soak those in the rubbing alcohol and kind of clean it out. And then we can get it all oiled up and back together. I'm not done with the cleaning process just yet, but this is my first Q-tip, and you can see just how disgusting that bearing is. That is not healthy at all. So once we get this thing cleaned up, it should look nice and good. Usually you just use the ends, get it cleaned out, and then use the other ends to dry it out. That's how I do it. And then make sure there's no hairs in there from the Q-tip. And then you're good to go. Oil the bearing up really good, oil the shaft really good, and put it back in there and reattach your C-clip. So that's a good sign that it's getting really clean. That's just from the back side. I still got to go around the front and clean off the front ones for the washers. You don't really want to attempt to try and take them out because I've broken them before, and it's really not a big deal considering you can just replace them with nylon washers and they're really readily accessible. So if you do break a front washer that's in the front of the motor, it's really not that big of a deal. But for the shaft size of a GE, it's a 3/8 on the outer diameter of the shaft. So if you're buying nylon washers, your inner diameter, the ID, needs to be 3/8. So we're going to get this all finished up and cleaned and we'll get it back together. Alright, so this is the final Q-tip of the drying process inside the bearing. As you can see, there's absolutely no dirt. It's nice and clean. The last Q-tip that I did use was this one. As you can see, there's very little on there compared to the first one. First one's basically black. So that's where that is. Now the bearing is clean. You're going to want to clean off the shaft of the rotor too, and I'll show you how, like, it may not look that bad from the surface, but oftentimes that can be very deceiving. So I'll even show you real quick. We'll get some rubbing alcohol on that and ready to go. Give it a nice little scrubbing off, and look at that. That was on the rotor, and you don't want that inside of your motor at all. So you just kind of get that all cleaned out everywhere you go, and then oil it up and get it back together. All of that was on the shaft of the rotor. Now you can see it's nice and shiny and cleaned up and ready to go. So it's all dried up. I gave the motor a little bit of time to air out and get all that rubbing alcohol out of there. Now it's time to use some zoom spout and get this thing all back together. And it's actually surprising. Look at how much that wick is soaked up out of all that oil, or that rubbing alcohol. It was a little higher than that even. It was almost fully submerged, and it's sucked up almost half of that bowl. So it tells you that that wick is good and it's very absorbent, so that's a good sign of it being healthy. So we're going to get this motor back together and we'll call it goods. If there's any play in the motor, I'm definitely going to add some nylon washers to this side, and we'll see what happens from there. It just so conveniently happened to be that I have a nice stockpile of these nylon washers ready to go. This is what I usually go with for the washers. They're really inexpensive. It's like 20 cents for a bag of 2 of them. And as you can see, it's a 3/8 flat washer, so we're going to get one of these in the motor. There's definitely a lot of space between it. It's hard to see, but you can see that edge of that groove, and the back washing, there's about a 1/4 inch, and that makes a lot of play in the motor, and you do not want that. So we're going to add a washer there and tighten it up. Just one nylon washer was enough to solve the gap and then give it just enough wiggle space. I might actually take out one of the very thin washers just to give it just a hint of play, because you don't want it to be super tight against that, but I'll see how it looks once I get it together. Alright, so we got it back together. As you can see, there's just a hint of wiggle right there, which is what you want. I decided to leave the washer in there, and it actually fit up just fine. And there's plenty of wiggle space, so it's not super stiff. It's maybe about not even an eighth, it's like a 16th of an inch of wiggle space. And as you can see, if I spin the rotor, it goes pretty good. But there is still a bit of a rubbing noise, and I'm trying to isolate where that's coming from. Not entirely sure what's causing it. It's very minimal, but as you can see, the rotor does spin a lot longer than it did before, so that's a much healthier spin down time. The rubbing is definitely a lot quieter than it was before, but then again, that oil still probably needs some time to seep in there. But that's actually a really good healthy spin down time for one of these. So now I got the plug back in place. Pretty much what I did was I just kind of lined it up, and then I used the blunt end of the screwdriver and tap it into place so it fits where it needs to be. And then, like I said, if you put that little hole there, you got yourself a nice oiling port. And the reason I punch it is because it actually makes a dimple, so you can get that tube of that zoom spout oiler in there. And it works really well. So the plate's back on, the wick's back in, everything's all lubricated up and ready to go. So now I'm going to remount the motor, and we're going to test run it. Alright, so we're about to test it with the rotor in place now. And it's all assembled and ready to go, so we'll see how it sounds. As you can tell, the rubbing is a lot quieter now. It's very minimal. And as you can see, it has a much better spin down time than before, so we're going to get the blade on and get it ready to go. And then you also got to get your motor cover on too. I don't have any super glue or any adhesive at the moment, so I can't really do anything about the shaded poles at the moment, but it doesn't really buzz all that much at all, so we're going to get it all back together and we're going to test run it, and then we'll do the balancing process. So there's the rotor fin that has the number 5 stamped into it, so we're going to line up the blade with the number 5 on that. Alright, let's start it up for the first time, shall we? Nice and balanced, too. It's not perfect, but it's definitely very nicely balanced. The cabinet isn't even shaking barely at all. Drop it on low. And it runs perfectly smooth with no rubbing. See how the spin down is now. It's got just a hint of rubbing. You won't even hear it while it's running. It's definitely got a better spin down than before. That oil's still seeping in there and doing its magic, so it's not going to be as good, but it's definitely an It's definitely an improvement from what it was before. So now we're going to get it all back together, grills and everything, and then we'll do another final test run. And then I'll show you a little something special about it next to a W25. So here we've got the W22 and the W25 side by side. First big thing you're going to notice is the size comparison. W22s are much bigger, and the badge placement. I did return the badge to its original place in the upper left corner, as it was only appropriate because this one is a much older one. So I figured, I didn't have one at the time that had one in the center, so I figured, I better return it to how it used to be. So, first things first, we're going to do a speed comparison. Start them both up on low. As you can see, the W22 gets up to speed way quicker. Higher RPMs. You can hear the difference. We'll go medium. Can't even hear the other one, the W25. Go high. You can hear a big difference. Turn that one to medium. Now they both sound the same. So that's a W25's low. Very quiet. This is W25's medium. This is W25's high. Ooh, we got some front washer clicks going on. So now we'll do the startup again. Now listen to the speed comparisons one more time. Much higher RPMs to this motor. I'm really quite fond of this one. This one's different. And here's the medium. And high. Definitely a much higher RPM motor. And I'm rather fond of this fan. Like I said in the very beginning of the video, when I got it, It had some weird handle mounted to it that I pulled off and stuck an original on, and then stuck a speed knob on it and replaced 4 of the grill bushings, 2 on each side, and that's about it. I think we got a solid runner here. I'm surprised it doesn't have any motor knock to it for how much gum and crap was in that bearing. So now all that's left is to replace that modern power cord with an appropriate vintage one that matches this era. So I think I'll do that real quick and then we'll see how it looks. So here we go. Fan's all done. That's all it took. I did add the original, like an original style cord. I used a rubber grommet and I'm adding some, what you call it, cock seal to it to hold it in place. And that should make it so it doesn't go nowhere. And it's an original style too, so look at the plug. It's got the old style plug. And apparently somebody seems to be interested in the cord. Hey, no, no, no. No, no, no. Here, play with that. Play with that. So there we go. Fan's all done. I just need to figure out a way to get this off. It's riveted in there, so we'll see if we can just kind of... that was easy. I don't know how to get them rivets out though. Probably gonna have to drill them out or something once I get a hold of a power drill. But otherwise, fan's all done. And I'm surprised how old this one is. It's one of the very first, I would assume, considering that it has a metal blade bushing thing there. It's all metal, and I've never seen one like that. So, anyways, thanks for watching. Hope you guys got some help out of this. Hope it helped you solve your problems. I don't know if I went over it, but as far as removing that front, that front rubbing noise, you just kind of oil it up. That's about it. And then check your felt washers, and if they're dry, worn out, replace them with nylons, because I hate using felt washers. The nylons seem to work a lot better in my opinion. And like I said, that's all you use is these little ones right here. Pretty cheap. So that's all there is to it. So thanks guys for watching. I hope you guys got some help out of this. So we will see you next video that I do.